Welcome to the People's Guild.
Each week we explore the Splinterland universe with guests from all across the mythical land of Praetoria.
Join us on our journey as we discuss the evolution of the game, the strategy, the lore, and the exciting path that lies ahead.
To support the People's Guild, make sure you subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts, and also check us out on PeakD, YouTube, and Twitter.
Send your questions, suggestions, and epic battles in our comments through Twitter or email at thepeoplesguildspl@gmail.com. We'll feature the best in our episodes and maybe airdrop you some prizes.
Thanks for tuning in and enjoy the show.
Welcome back to the People's Guild. Another week, another episode, another great guest. This is the first in a while where we've had some requests come from the audience. So shout out to a buddy, Supreme Victory Studios, iBlast, connected us with an OG of Steam and Hive. We were just talking off air about some mutual acquaintances. Flowy, we're talking about you. Meetups at Steam Fests of yesteryear. We've got the RealWolf on the show, man. It's a pleasure to host you. Glad to have you. Appreciate you making time to hop on with us.
Yeah, I'm really grateful to be here. Thank you for the invitation, and also again for iBlast for the idea.
Yeah, man. Thanks for joining us. I know you've been around, Hive for a while, and so I believe you were into Hive first and then kind of became familiar with Splinterlands. Is that correct, or did you kind of come in to Hive through Splinterlands?
So I learned about so Steam was my entryway into crypto in 2017, and around the time I also found out about Splinterlands, or rather in 2018. But at that time it was called Steam Monsters.
Mm-hmm.
But I only really went really deep into Splinterlands around 2021. No.
Wow, okay.
2022.
So yeah, what was your sort of ramp up to Hive, and how did you get involved with Hive in those 3 years before you started to get more involved in Splinterlands? What was your journey like into Hive and getting deeper into Hive and even becoming a witness in Hive?
So at the time it was Steam, and the platform was called Steemit. And I found out about Steemit and I started posting. The first posts I made, they didn't get any traction, but I kind of stick to it. And somehow I started to pick up coding again. And I started writing a few programs, and it turned into projects. And then I kind of stick with it. So it was a very organic way of getting into Steam, which is now Hive. Yeah.
That seems to be the name of the game. I'm thinking back to when I first started posting on on the Hive blog, PeakD, and it was months and months of seemingly zero traction, and then all of a sudden it seemed like that snowball had actually been rolling for quite some time. And we've talked about it in episodes past, but we really gained momentum over the last 18 months on our kind of Hive blog presence. And consistency seems to be the name of the game with growing your platform on that blog, whether you're involved with projects or just blogging or posting videos, whatever it is. It seems like consistency seems to be the X factor with everything.
Yeah, that's very true. That's also I've been thinking a lot about the first few years on Steam now, because I put a lot of work into the blog posts, and I had these little images under my posts, and I put a lot of attention into my presence, and over time I started getting, I didn't do that anymore. I just wrote posts, but that behavior in the beginning really helped me with a consistent schedule of writing to get noticed in the community. And I'm glad to hear that this is working for you as well.
Well, it was a long time, but before it happened, and I feel like, you know, there's been a very recent, as a result of the DHF and trying to kind of marry the two communities a little bit more closely between Hive and Splinterlands. You know, obviously Splinterlands has been desperately clinging to the support of the decentralized Hive fund and you know, staying afloat above the return proposal. And therefore there's been a you know, a lot of momentum within the Splinterlands community to really embrace Hive and try and establish a more reciprocal relationship with the blockchain than in years past. And I can imagine that there's going to be a number of folks who are attempting to create content and posting content and staying consistent with it that are going to, you know, kind of scratch their heads around, you know, why is my content not gaining traction? Do you, you know, obviously you've been around for years and years. I think I looked at your account and you came on 2017, I think is what I saw.
Yeah.
And now you're top 20 Hive witness. Do you have any kind of words of wisdom outside of stay consistent with respect to folks who are, you know, trying to make a name, trying to establish a presence in Hive?
Yeah. So the days in the past, they were a bit different because what we have right now, um, the way you get noticed on Hive is by people voting on you, and those are usually curators. So there are different projects which have a huge upvote, and if they upvote you, you will get into hot or trending, and then you will get more views. But in the beginning of Steam, there were these so-called bitbots. So and what many people did, they kind of similarly how you would on X or on Facebook, how you would purchase how you would purchase promoted posts. That was a bit similar. So when I look back at the time, it was a lot of manual work and doing projects which the community wanted and needed, and B, also promoting yourself. And the only thing that currently exists in that area is, if I remember correctly, the feature of Peaked. So Peaked also has a promotion feature. So if people want to get noticed, they should probably do what you are doing, producing good content, and also trying to find a way to get noticed, because that's the most difficult thing in the beginning. You've got no followers, and you need to be consistent.
Well,
Yeah,
I'm honored that you use us as an example to say, you know, put out good content like the People's Guild. So I appreciate that, Wolf. I think, you know, one of the biggest learnings in our experience on Hive is really embracing the community and looking at other, you know, the name of the game is really engagement across the network and embracing and leaning into the community that's established. I've found that that's the number one way to really get yourself noticed is comment on, you know, look for those posts that are trending and engage with the authors, engage with, you know, other folks that are also engaging. Would you say that that's an effective route to, you know, kind of getting yourself noticed and establishing that network for a presence?
Yes. The community aspect is both very important for Hive and Splinterlands. Regardless of the products, one of the biggest value propositions both Hive and Splinterlands have are the communities. And because we are so tight-knit in regards to many people came, but a lot of people left, that results in people expecting kind of good content. It's easier to get noticed Um, I think it's easier to get noticed with not so great content. For example, in the beginning of Steam, there were a lot of people who auto commented under every post I made, and that sometimes worked, even if they just spammed with a lot of people, because some people also just made a lot of posts. But because there are not that many content creators on Splinterlands and Hive right now, making sure that the comments are valuable and bring something to the table is most important. So just getting in the conversation, trying to figure out, okay, how can we make Hive and Splinterlands better? I think that's one of the best ways to get noticed. And if you produce content, whether it's short form or long form videos, podcasts, if you produce value for the community, people will listen, because that's what we actually need. People producing a lot of value for the community.
Yeah, someone who's got, a foot in both camps, kind of what do you see as Splinterland's value to Hive and the Hive community?
When it's very simple, because when Steam initially turned to Hive in 2020, Splinterlands, or Steam Monsters at the time, was still on Steam. And when they switched camps, so to say, the user base, or the active users, went through the roof. At the time, I was maintaining a project similar to DebRudder for Steam, or now Hive, and so I was watching all of the metrics and the data at the time, and Splinterlands was by far the biggest application, and still is on Hive. So the biggest value that Splinterlands provides to Hive is the amount of users. Hive would still exist without Splinterlands, but it would it wouldn't be favorable if Splinterlands moved away. At the same time, we're noticing that Splinterlands needs Hive right now. We noticed that in the proposal. So there's a symbiotic relationship right now, which is good.
Mm-hmm. So as someone who's maybe got some more insight into this than we do, what do you think are some of the arguments people have that are against funding that proposal for Splinterlands? Or can you kind of help explain to us in the audience, like, kind of, people who are maybe more into Splinterlands and, kind of only are adjacent to Hive because of that, and don't spend much time with the overall Hive community, kind of what are the arguments against funding that proposal? Kind of like, where's the friction coming that some people will have pulled their votes on the proposal? We've kind of been up and down over the past month here. Can you kind of give us, at least your take on why you think that might be?
Yes, of course. I would say the biggest argument against the proposal is the amount. With that, I mean 500K, and of course, Splinterlands is not getting the full amount because it's sometimes being unvoted, and then a certain amount is not being funded. But it's still a lot of money, which needs to come out somewhere. And I would argue that, or people who would argue against the proposal, which I'm not, but if I would take on their shoes, I would try to, or I'm trying to explain their viewpoint, they would say that the amount that is required does not have a guaranteed positive effect, and there's no guarantee that if the 500K are spent, that there's not going to be another proposal. I would say that is the probably biggest argument against it. Now, on the other hand, the value Splinterlands provided to Hive over the last few years are most likely around that value. Now, of course, we are currently not yet, we are 20 cents Hive. So when Hive was at $2, if Splinterlands burned 5 Hive or 3 Hive for an account, that value they were spending, Splinterlands was spending for Hive, or the Hive they were burning was a lot of money in terms of USD value. If you take the same amount of Hive now, it's of course less, but I would argue that the amount of value that Splinterlands generated for Hive over the last 5 years at least is at least that amount. Yeah.
Interesting. I've never really quite thought of it like that. Do you still have that sort of DApp radar thing? Are you tracking metrics of Hive users and seeing what the activity on the chain is?
I do not. At some point I stopped that, and primarily because the data that comes out of, for example, DApp radar is pretty good and is good enough for most projects. And yeah, but I'm tracking that. And maybe another important point regarding the funding amount, which some people might not think about it that way. The amount that Splinterlands is asking for from the Hive DAO, the 500K, that's a very good deal for Splinterlands because there are no strings attached. Now I know there were these proposals, or there are still, that, if I remember correctly, the SPS DAO purchased Hive and are in the process of powering it up. Please correct me if I'm wrong there. But so there are a few maybe negotiations or maybe a few little drawbacks, not drawbacks, but certain things that Splinterlands or the DAO needs to give. But the most of the 500K are no strings attached, and people sometimes argue that the amount that is in the ecosystem within Web3 gaming would be much higher than the 500K. And based out of my own experience, talking with people and looking at different grant options, the 500K is very good. Because there are no strings attached. They don't need to provide any amount of metrics, how much, where that money is spent or how much value they will generate for Hive. It's really more a Splinterlands gets that money and they can use it however they see fit, or what they need it from, what they need from it. And yeah, and that's something people should probably take in mind when they think about the amount requested. I would still finishing up that thought point. I still argue that the 500K for Splinterlands is well spent, but it's a really good sum for Splinterlands. A good deal, but for both sides. So it's a good deal for both sides, I would argue.
Sure. And just to clarify there, Wolf, yeah, you're absolutely correct. It's the Splinterlands DAO will stake 1 million Hive for a minimum of 24 months and swap 130K of stable coins into HBD. Yeah, I kind of feel like that 500K we've I don't remember. Maybe you guys remember some of the detail around that initial DHF proposal from Yaba, but I seem to remember that is essentially being earmarked for a marketing campaign. We've, as recently as the last town hall, it was kind of addressed, and there were a lot of questions around timing and what kind of product portfolio should be on shelves for Splinterlands at the time of said marketing push and that sort of stuff. And kind of in the background, we've seen a little bit of, I think just today, actually, the official Splinterlands Discord swapped one of the existing, or I guess I should say pre-existing Discord channels into a Hive blogging specific channel. We've seen the powered by Hive icon start to appear in places throughout, Splinterland's main website. Um, it kind of feels like this stuff should have been present from the get-go, and maybe it's, I can understand both sides and why there are some folks on the other side of the fence saying, hey, Splinterlands doesn't deserve this 500K. It's almost 3K a day. But at the same time, I've also heard, and maybe you have some more clarified numbers, Wolf, around the total percentage contribution of transactions from Splinterlands versus Hive as a whole. I've heard as high as 80%. I've heard as low as 20%. I think anywhere in that range is a massive contribution to the Hive ecosystem. Obviously one is much more extreme than the other. And I would argue if it is 80%, that's probably not very healthy for Hive, and would tell me as a Hive holder, we cannot afford to lose Splinterlands. Do you have any sort of ballpark idea of the overall transactions and volume of Splinterlands versus Hive as a whole?
Yeah, I'm opening up their product as we speak, and looking there, they're not okay. I'm looking at games specifically. Let me look at Hive and in general. So the biggest one is Splinterlands, of course, with 5.4K active wallets. The next one is Peaked with 1.4K. And after that, Essency with 1.1, and then TerraCore with 800. So Splinterlands still makes up a huge chunk of the active wallets. Know how many of those wallets are actually humans versus the spots is not known. I don't know that, but similar how you said, Hive couldn't or shouldn't afford losing Splinterlands because Splinterlands makes up most of the activity and probably also much or all of the possibility of gaming on Hive at least. There are other apps which focus on different features, but for gaming, I would argue that Splinterlands is the most important aspect, and yes, it shouldn't leave Hive. I would say it can't leave Hive. That would be very, very bad for Hive.
Yeah, and just to clarify, I went back real quick and looked at the proposal, and Matt's language is, he said in the proposal that the funds will primarily be used for hiring a marketing person and running a marketing campaign towards the end of this year. So I guess he says that's his intent. It seems like that's their intention. Wolf, like you said, there's no specific language that's specific on how exact numbers of how the funds will be earmarked and used very specifically. So I guess primarily used, that's sort of open to interpretation. But I think that seems to be the team's idea and goal, at least, is to use that for marketing and promoting Splinterlands, which of course also kind of indirectly at least markets and promotes Hives.
Yes, which is very. I mean, yes, you're right. And if Splinterlands is marketed and there's this huge banner of powered by Hive, that's obviously a very good thing for Hive.
Well, so I feel like this is a good opportunity to start to kind of segue into some other subjects here. On the DHF, I know I seem to remember Matt referencing the RealWolf and the game Splinter Royale and becoming Ethguardians, Eth Warriors. What's it? What remind me of the name? The new name? Ethguards.
Ethgard.
I had it
Ethgard
right the first
Legends.
time. Yes. So I seem to remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, Matt kind of using you as an example of Hive misstepping and losing the opportunity of keeping a developer like you in a game like Ethgard's or at the time Splinter Royale on the Hive blockchain. So uh I think that I seem to remember some commentary from you where it was a little bit of a surprise and yada yada. We don't have to get into the details, but I want to use this as kind of an example of, as somebody who is involved in Web3 gaming, as somebody who is intimately involved with the Hive ecosystem and having made that conscious decision to take your game to uh the EVM chains. What what is it that let's start at the marketing front, and I would love to hear your pitch for what does effective Web3 gaming marketing look like in your mind, and what do we need to be kind of looking out for in terms of, we've had marketing folks in the past, and say what you will about Chatter. We He had a rough gig at a rough time. Um, and unfortunately we didn't see really the fruits of those labors. Um, so I'm kind of curious, having your head in this space and having kind of shopped around different blockchains and all within the umbrella of Web3 gaming, what is it that you would kind of look for in terms of an effective marketing strategy and an effective marketing person and or team?
Hmm. So being active in the space also means I have to look at other projects and what they're doing. And what I've noticed is the landscape changed dramatically or simply a lot within the last few years. When Splinterlands was first created in 2018, the other game that was created was not the only other game, but another game that was also created was CryptoKitties. And since then, the games have evolved a lot. And right now, what seems to be very trendy, at least on X or generally on social media, are are games that are hyper casual and that focus on play to airdrop uh, campaigns. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with games on Telegram. Are you familiar?
I'm nah. What is it?
On
So
Telegram, is that what you said?
yeah,
Oh, Telegram.
games on Telegram, the messenger.
Mm-hmm.
So
Superficially.
those yes, so those games are very simple games that run within the messenger. So you're you're messaging a user, which is a bot, and then you click on a little button there, start game, and then the game opens up. And successful projects within that area are games that are basically cookie clicker games, which
Mm-hmm.
means they are they're a way for people, and usually those are people in countries like Iran and other countries where people are using those games to farm airdrops. And a lot of games use that. So when you ask me about what does a successful marketing campaign look like, then what I'm noticing is that a lot of games are going that route of either being hyper casual, and the play to airdrop is basically the whole reason for the game. So there's no token yet, but you're farming this idle cookie clicker game because you want to get some token in the future. Or games run specific campaigns called play to airdrop, which reward people. And I'm not sure if that's the right way to do it. I'm just trying to explain the current landscape of what other games are doing.
Hmm.
And what also seems to be very trendy right now is that there are these, I'm not sure if you're familiar with them, but there are these alpha hunters and collab managers on Twitter. Are you familiar with them or what they're doing?
I am not. No.
Okay, no problem. So they're basically influencers of Web3 gaming or general crypto projects, which are making. So alpha hunters are basically people who are picking out new exciting projects or projects which have some kind of mint upcoming. With minting, that means, for example, Rooney was a mint, but it was paid. Imagine Rooney would be a whitelist mint where people could mint those for free, and then those alpha hunters would share those projects, or those collab managers on Twitter would connect different communities. Imagine crypto community A collaborates with Splinterlands. So and it seems that a lot of projects are going that way. Again, I'm not saying that is the right way. I'm just explaining the current what I'm noticing around the area, especially since I'm building a game myself and I'm getting, of course, these offers of people who are saying, "Hey, are you looking for a collab manager?" And I'm not doing that, but it's very interesting to see that.
Mm.
So when you're asking me how I would tackle the marketing side, my honest answer would be I'm not sure, because I'm not a marketer. So I can do marketing, but I'm a much better builder or developer, and I can also design stuff, but I'm a much better builder. But based on our experience as a Splinterlands community, we are aware of the downsides of trying to only focus on the monetary aspects, which means just trying to sell people a dream of, hey, there's a free mint. Do you want to participate with it? Your community gets a few free slots. But that's a way. That's a way that some projects are taking on.
Wolf, I can't believe you're suggesting that Splinterlands has fallen guilty of of committing the play to airdrop in the past.
Well,
Yeah, I'm just teasing. A number of
no.
times.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I feel like, I was just looking at some alpha hunters in the background while you were talking through that stuff, and some of the key words that you hit on are new and upcoming and fresh games. Splinterlands is none of those things. So
Yeah.
it's really in a unique space. I feel like, maybe Axie Infinity is the only one that kind of fits in that same realm of, it's an ancient game in the space. So yeah, I just don't know if we can expect that same sort of clout to come from, these sorts of hype men on places like Twitter, to embrace what Splinterlands is trying to do.
Yeah, it seems that a lot of projects which are upcoming are kind of are looking like Splinterlands in 2018 or 2020. It's my it looks like they are trying to they didn't go through that kind of cycle yet of a boom and bust cycle, and are just um trying to pump their numbers as much as possible. But since we went through such a period of having exceptional growth and then a decline because bots left the game, we know that this is not the way. But a lot of projects seem to not care, or they haven't made the experience yet. And since you mentioned Axie Infinity, the it seems that the mm, it seems that the project is still very attractive and successful, simply also because they reached outwards to new games. So when you go to Axie Infinity, they have a myriad of different games based on Axie Infinity Universe, which was also maybe a quick side info, which was also my dream when I was a year ago working on Splinter Royale, of what Splinterlands could become. A an ecosystem based on an amazing IP and lore, which supports different kind of games, which in return attracts more people because not everyone likes card games, some like racing games, etc., etc. But when you look at X and Infinity, their OG game is not really, I guess, popular. I'm not sure. It could be popular, but most other games which are also in that ecosystem, and especially on Ronin, because the creators of X Infinity also created Ronin, and Ronin recently onboarded, I think, they onboarded 7 new games to their blockchain, and they seem to be getting a lot of hype. But I'm not sure how many of those are real users. I don't know. Based on my own experience, it's very difficult to differentiate who are real humans and who are bots. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a good. I do want to back up a little bit and kind of understand your story on what got you into gaming and what, led you to want to do game design. I know from looking at your Peak D profile, the background picture seems like a picture that kind of comes out of like Castles of Burgundy or Carcassonne. I don't know if that's just kind of a painting you like because of where you live, or if you're into those types of games. But yeah, I just kind of want to know, kind of what your history gaming is and what led you to want to develop Splinter Royale.
Mm. So I found that image at one point while looking for a thumbnail or a header image, and I really liked it because I'm a big I like knights and castles, and that was my thing, right? When I was a little child, I was playing
Yeah.
with Playmobil, and they were little knights, and that's what formed me, I would say. Then I started playing Pokemon on Game Boy and Game Boy Advance a lot. And then I went into World of Warcraft, and I played a lot of World of Warcraft. I played Circuit Online. I played League of Legends. So gaming was also a huge part of my life. At some point, I didn't have any more time really because I worked a lot. Um, I really like. I also really like casual games like Mario Kart. That's a really cool, a fun game to play because it doesn't take much time and you can play it with your family.
Mhm.
But the main reason I was building Splinter Royale is actually a reason because is is more towards what I mentioned before regarding I wanted to showcase what's possible in a um, what what would be possible when using the same assets within a new game mode.
Yeah. Yeah, and I thought it was a cool idea. We had Splinter Forge, Splinter Royale. So are you willing to talk about and kind of talked about did you reach out to the team at all for support when you were building Splinter Royale to kind of help you do the coding and integrate everything and kind of what eventually led you to kind of move the game off of Hive and over to an EVM blockchain?
Yes. Mm, so in retrospect, the the timing was unfortunate due to the fact that Splinterlands had their hands full with their own Prime main game, and since they also had to sell their Soulkeep game, there was simply no way of giving much support, at least on a workload level. And since the money side was also tough, there wasn't much support there either. I did make the 2 proposals for the DAO, which the first one was about a grant of, if I remember correctly, it was about 40 or 50K dollars, US dollars. And the second one was similar to the Soulkeep SPS Awards proposal. It was about, if I remember correctly, 1 million SPS per year for 1 year, given out to players. And they both didn't work out, which in hindsight is, or it's fine. It's again, it wasn't the right timing. It was just not the right time for Splinterlands. Unfortunately, it would have been perfect. It would have been much simpler, just reusing existing assets and being able to use their lore and everything. That's also why a lot of the stuff within Splinter Royale was designed in such a way that it would naturally fit together, because I really like when things seem to fit together. But that didn't work out. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at the timeline here, Wolf, and it looks like the proposal was initially tossed up end of March, and then you kind of announced the name change, which I'm assuming coincides with the change in blockchain, beginning of May. And so for about that 6-week period, it was, I'm sure you were kind of mulling your options and trying to figure out what was the best move for the future of the game. And man, timing is absolutely everything. I can't help but think, if what if you had been developing Splinter Royale 2.5 years ago, going into Splinterfest and the talk with Genesis League goals, and the time when the idea for Soulkeep was born. We've heard it kind of across many different content creators conversations, and in a ton of articles around the idea of Splinterlands kind of dropped the ball in terms of digging deep, and instead we focused on digging wide. And it's come back to bite us in the ass, and we're paying for that to this day. And hopefully we can recover and be better for it. But yeah, to your point, man, I think one of the things that Soulkeep has never really interested me. I've played a couple of games, tower defense. I think the extent of my experience with tower defense is Plants versus Zombies. I don't know if that even really qualifies as a good tower defense game, but it's one of those mindless games that you could spend a couple hours and have some fun. But what I did love about the idea of Soulkeep was it was something like written into the lore, where I don't know, for example, Lyra the Dark and Lyra Deep Swimmer sit down and play a game of Soulkeep in Praetoria, and that's kind of how Soulkeep is happening in the back. So those sorts of interconnected, interwoven ecosystems of games is such a cool prospect. So I see what you're saying, and I really wish that timing had been different, and we could have all these different networks of game. And to your earlier point, maybe there's a dragon racing game or something like that instead of moon carts. What if we had pursued these other paths that are using Splinterlands lore and the very cool characters and very sweet artwork that is unique to Splinterlands in this multitude of ways. Yeah, hopefully I'm not rubbing salt in the wounds, man, but I'm thinking, like, what if we had pursued these paths 2 years prior instead of when we did? We could be in a very different position.
Yeah, I'm actually very happy that you're glad that you're talking about it, because those were my thoughts exactly. Of course, hindsight is always 2020, and you're always smarter in hindsight. but I'm not sure if you know this, but I was working at the company at Splinterlands, but on the GLS and Invenium side. And I did that also primarily because I didn't want to leave that team hanging. But in hindsight, I wish I would have put that time if I were working for them on Splinterlands related products, because while I believe the vision is cool to have different game modes, to have different games on Invenium and and Golds, and I really hope that everything works out. It is kind of sad that the company didn't go all in 100% on Splinterlands IP. And I can fully understand the feeling you're thinking about this, because that's also what I've been thinking about every time I'm thinking back on Splinter Royale and what could have been. Primarily also because mm, when we designed the heroes for Splinter Royale, we had the idea of picking 7 different splinters and then designing the lore and everything around those splinters. And this, while it's amazing, it's also super scary because you're basing your whole assets based on another IP. And if that IP says, "Hey, you're not allowed to use our lore," then what what you what are you going to do then? And that was a big reason when I was thinking about, okay, which way forward do I want to build this game? It's already difficult to build a game, A, and B, it's even more difficult to build a game in crypto or Web3, because you not only need to build a game that works and is fun, but you also need to take care of all the infrastructure. If you're building a on-chain game, you need to make sure that the contracts are secure, and see if you're building all of that also based on another IP which you don't own. Man, that is scary and rough. And that was the primary reason why after a long time thinking, um, we, I or we came to the conclusion that we wanted to have something. And then Ethgard was born, Ethgard Legends, because we wanted something that can stand on its own 2 feet. We're not saying that we are closed off to Splinterlands. We are still using the cards in the game, and that we are very grateful for that, being able to do that. But not being completely reliant on another project, which we don't have any control over, was a huge relief. And another thing you mentioned was about the blockchain. Actually, I think I would have also went to another blockchain if we would have stayed Splinter Royale, but it just went hand in hand, because if you launch on another blockchain and we create a branding around the game, then it's difficult to change it once you're successful. You can notice it with Polygon and Matic, right? People already know Matic, but they're changing now to Pol, which is cool. But I mean, it's a little change, but it's difficult to change your branding, and those are the reasons why we decided to go with Ethgard Legends. I would love to talk about the reasons for the EVM, but I didn't want to mesh this all into the same sentence.
No. Let's go there. So I'd love to kind of understand, for the non-developers out there, I'd love to kind of hear some pros and cons of Hive versus EVM, and are there certain aspects that you wish were available on the other side, whether that's in Hive or on an EVM chain?
Yes. So the most important point is, it doesn't matter where the game lives on. It doesn't matter whether it's Hive, whether it's BSC, whether it's Arbitrum, whether it's Solana, whether it's Ethereum or Base. It does not matter. What matters is how future-proof the system is, which means Hive, and I'm trying to explain this I'm trying to explain this in a way that it makes sense to people who are not yet developers or who are not developers. Hive is a blockchain which does not have smart contracts. And smart contracts are basically code which runs decentralized on a blockchain. And because Hive does not have smart contracts, it means that Splinterlands, in order to create the game, had to create all of the logic around, imagine like when you are transferring your cards from another person, from yourself to another person, all of that logic in an on-chain game would live within a contract, within a game items contract. And you would put that to the blockchain and it would run there and it would be decentralized. There would still be admin ownership and stuff, but it would be decentralized. But since Hive does not support contracts which run automatically on the blockchain, they needed to create their own servers which handle these transactions. Those are now becoming part of the validator, which is why the validator is important. And the main difference between Hive and EVM is primarily the interoperability, which means when a new project, imagine Nintendo wants to build a Web3 game. What they're looking for is what is the most used standard and where are people building on. They're not going to choose they're not going to choose Hive because it's simply too small, as much as I don't like it, but that's a fact. And also because it doesn't use a standard which is widely recognized. But EVM is a huge standard which has different blockchains. And at that point, it doesn't matter if Nintendo launches on Arbitrum or Base. If they build their game on EVM, they could even decide in the future, hey, we're going to create our own chain, Nintendo chain, and they can bring their existing game to their new chain. If they would spend their time building their own validator on Hive, if they wanted to create their own EVM chain, they would have to redo their complete game, and that's just a lot of work. So when you're designing a new game, or a new project, you're trying to think forward, okay, in the next 5 years, is there a chance that we are going to have our own chain, or where do you want to go? And in that sense, it makes sense to choose a standard. It doesn't matter if it's EVM or maybe Solana gets popular enough that it becomes a standard. But for me personally, I decided on EVM as a standard. Does it make sense?
Yeah,
I
think so.
there was some serious processing time there, but yeah, I think I'm following you. So let's talk about kind of the non-developer side of EVM versus Hive. Obviously, to kick off this episode, we were talking about the community-driven aspect and the network that's available for Hive, and Steamfest, and the relationships that have been developed. Obviously, you were taking a significant risk from kind of the social aspect and leaving Hive to pursue the construction of this Ethgard Legends, and assuming that you've got ambitions of growing your own community on an EVM chain and all of these sorts of things. How scary was the change from that respect, if at all?
Very big. Not primarily, but also due to the fact that for the last 6 years, I've been building on Hive. And Hive became became like a family to me. I was on 2 fests, one Steam Fest and one Hive Fest. I sadly couldn't go to this year's fest, but it is a project which is very important to me. And leaving that site and building somewhere else with the risk of being seen as someone who leaves or a traitor, or I don't know what you want to call that, but that was risky. Or it wasn't a great feeling. But I knew that if my plan is to build an on-chain game, and I'm sorry that we're going again into a technical discourse, but it's important to talk about this part as well, because on-chain gaming primarily means what we're having right now with Splinterlands is that we really need to get the validators up so the game can run on its own, regardless what happens to the company. Because if, for example, the company shuts down for whatever reason, if all the data is running on their servers, maybe we can replicate some of it, and they're probably going to be waste, but it is super important that a game which calls itself decentralized also is really decentralized. And being able to do that directly on EVM was it, and I'm able to do that directly on EVM, which was the reason why I decided to go for that. At some point, I hope that at some point Hive will going to support EVM. I know that Vaultec is working on a solution. However, the toolkit, and I'm sorry, I'm going again into the technical stuff, but that is very important because it seems that because that is something that people should need to know, or that people should know of how this stuff works. Because on EVM, there are a lot of tools which makes it very easy to run your own chain. For example, the chain I'm on right now, which is called B3, they are using another service which creates their own chain for them. That means they didn't have to go and spend 2 years, 3 years working on a product. Hey, they could just buy a white label product, slap the branding on it, add more tools to it, and then focus on the branding and the community aspect. And being able to be in such an ecosystem provides a lot of value. And my hope is that at some point Hive joins or builds a bridge between the huge tool set within the EVM ecosystem and between Hive.
Well, I appreciate you pursuing the the technical discussion here. I think for as uninitiated in the world of development as I am, I think Hep is right there with me. I'm not going to speak for you, Hep, but given our processing time in responding to some of this, I feel like you're right there with me. I feel like it's absolutely imperative for us to at least have an understanding and grasp of this stuff at a very superficial level. So my understanding is validators, they're key for a whole bunch of different reasons, and namely exactly what you just kind of alluded to there, Wolf, is that the validators allowing for the game to operate with or without Steam Monsters Inc. Is number one, but number two, having the validators will allow for us to create these bridges to other chains. I don't know if you've listened to, we had a conversation with PJ, the CTO. I guess it was about 2 months or so ago now, And that's one of his big ambitions with respect to what's on the other side of the project that is completing validator licensing and node operating. Is that kind of is my understanding correct that the validators is the big missing piece in allowing us to kind of create this interoperability between chains?
Mhm. I'm not sure about the exact words, or I'm not sure what PJ exactly was referring to, but in terms of bridging to other chains, that means it simply means that the server, I'm getting technical again, but um, the server, it could be the validator. So what we're doing right now is Splinterlands is running the game. And what we're doing is or what they are doing is they are moving the code that they run into the validator so they can so the validator can run that. And the validator is important because it allows us, or it allows Splinterlands to be run by multiple servers. Right now we have a single one, or we have multiple. If we have we also can have multiple, but we have one organization called Steam Monsters, which is running the server. And once we have validators, we can distribute the load. And the support for bridges, they can also be implemented by Steam Monsters themselves. So they can run a single server and then they run a bridge to another chain, and that works fine. But in order to actually become decentralized and reducing legal hurdles, it's important for it to become decentralized. So the I'm glad that the current focus is on the validators, and it should be done rather sooner than later.
Yeah, so one question I had coming out of this, especially coming out of the town hall, was are validators going to be running just the SPS transactions, or are they going to be running, the game asset transactions and battles and stuff as well, or at least kind of like the way they've been posting it to the blockchain? I don't know if Wolf, if you have a better understanding of this. I kind of thought that they were just going to be running the SPS um, transactions, and that all the game stuff and the game assets was going to remain with Splinterlands. Do you have a different take
Yeah.
on that, or do you think that maybe they're trying to just move it in phases?
So while I was when I was working at their company on GLS, I was also working on the validator on their end, and since it's pretty much the same code base, I have some sort of understanding of what the system is capable of. I don't know what their plan or vision is. However, to your question, for the first step, it's 100% on. It's highly likely the focus is going to be on supporting financial transactions, which means rewards, items, cards, everything that's important to be on the chain. Games are not important, and there's also there can also be a huge problem due to just the load of data that's being created by them. So there might need to be a different design decision around implementing those into the validator. But it's possible, and it's probably good that it's going to happen. And that's also one thing I'm referring to with on-chain gaming. So on-chain gaming primarily means, imagine you have even if the validator handles all of the data around the transactions, if the game is not being run in a way that it can be run without Steam Monsters Inc., the game is not really the game. It's just right. It's not really Splinterlands the game. So at some point there needs to be a way for the community to be able to run the game. That doesn't need to be in a form of different of a validator. It could be simple game servers, which it's going to be technical, but there are ways. But it's important that this is going to be open source in some sense as well, because otherwise we are just going to be left with one part of Splinterlands, and the game is, yeah,
Yeah.
doesn't.
So
Yeah.
are you saying that the code basically said your knowledge of it, what they were working on, the plan was, at the time, it was capable of running the whole game through the validator
No.
nodes?
Yeah, no. What I meant is that at that time, the focus is going to be on, or was going to be on supporting financial transactions, which are important.
Okay.
So it's probably going to be like you're playing a game, and then you're going to get a receipt for 10 SPS, and the validator is going to verify that you can actually get those 10, that the receipt for the 10 SPS was signed by an creditable source. In that case, it would be SD monsters.
Okay. Though, I mean, is that gonna be them to require to open source all their game code, which, it doesn't seem like they really want to do that, right?
So, I mean, it's a good question. In my sense, when I was currently on Ethgard Legends, my game code is also not open source, and I don't think it needs to be. But at some point, if the game should continue to exist in some form, there needs to be a way for anybody outside the company to be able to run it. It does not need to be open source. It could also be, in some sense, where the DAO selects a few different organizations which are able to see the code and share it. That could be a way, but there needs to be a way outside of the company to run the game. Otherwise, you're going to have assets, but they're useless because you can't use them. The community or the DAO would need to create their own game modes, but that I don't know if we really want that. I mean, we can of course do that, but would be better to, or at least good to have at some point the option to run the game as a community.
Unless I've vastly misunderstood some of Clay's kind of public questioning and comments around what he hopes to accomplish with the DAO and what he, his ambitions for the DAO. I think that's exactly what he wants to see, is that, come hell or high water, that the validators and the DAO together will be able to persevere Splinterlands. So I would assume you're right on with what you're saying there, Wolf. I want to kind of zoom out and look at Web3 and Splinterlands as an example of Web3, and looking at some of our mistakes and some of our successes. Are there kind of some key takeaways that you're either looking to implement with Ethgard Legends or looking to avoid with Ethgard Legends based on your experience with Splinterlands and Hive gaming?
Yes. That's a very good question, because I've actually written a small article on X about it, and I called it the dilemma of Web3 gaming, which is primarily about the issue between the current audience of Web3 gaming and the audience of Web3 gaming, Web2 gaming, which means when you talk with traditional gamers about Web3 and crypto and NFTs, they're either telling you, I don't know what that is. Isn't that this Bitcoin thing? Or they're telling you, oh yeah, it's this scam thing. I don't want to buy a JPEG. There are, of course, probably other opinions, but those are the biggest ones. And then you also have this huge group in Web3, which are really just focused on making money and getting airdrops and getting tokens and being in it for the money. And building a bridge is really difficult because when you're building a game, and you can see that with a lot of current games, when you're building a game, you need an audience, of course. You need people to play the game. But the current audience in Web3, the biggest one wants rewards. They want airdrops. But if you focus primarily on that, you're just confirming the bias people in traditional gaming have in regards to, oh yeah, it's just this money thing and it's not really useful. If you're not doing that, you're running into the risk of not having Web3 users and traditional gamers still saying, hey, yeah, I still don't want to have anything to do with it. I don't like NFTs. I think they're a scam. So what I would like to see in Web3 in that regards is more of a focus on the true values. And this is, of course, extremely shaped by my experience with Splinterlands, which I can imagine you've made similar experiences in regards to monetary incentives can't be the reason alone. Otherwise, it turns into hype and busts. So people make money and people lose money, and that's painful. And two, if it turns into a Ponzi, it's just as worse. However, there's a real value in Web3, and that is digital ownership, transparency, ownable ownership. I already have that, and that games can exist on their own. So games can exist on their own, and also Web3 can have a great marketing effect. So all of what I've just spoken about, why they can't be the main focus, they can be a tool to attract people. So for example, instead of saying, hey, I'm going to pay this amount of marketing money to Twitter, how about I'm doing a campaign of play to airdrop but that is just this one-time thing, and through this I'm getting eyeballs and people join the game. But it should be very clear that that is not a sustainable model. But finding the right way is very difficult, and I find this very challenging. Yes.
Do you think that's like one of the biggest challenges or one of the biggest things that keeps you up at night as a Web3 game developer is trying to find that balance?
Yeah. It it really sometimes keeps me up at night because the incentives are just there for you to, the incentives are there for games to just sell out and do these constant boom and bust cycles, right? Your games just sell assets and then they get funding and they get players, but it's not the right thing. And we know this because we are at the other end right now. We are through a boom and bust cycle, and we know that, hey, organic growth is good. It's good to get people involved and to have ownership, even if it's soulbound. I don't like soulbound that much, but I understand it and also implement it into Ethgard Legends. But it can't just be about money. And yeah, to be honest, I don't have a concrete answer how to tackle that problem. I think I would say the one answer would be focusing on great gameplay, on making sure the game is decentralized and there's ownership, and some sort of incentives for people to play the game. It can't be that much that, for example, one issue I'm seeing with Splinterlands is a lot is about the effect of people just joining the game, renting a few cards, selling all the profits, and then just repeating it. So they're just basically milking it. And that's not sustainable. However, they are still players, so it's really difficult to find a balance there.
Yeah, it's really going to be interesting to see what, we're all kind of waiting with bated breath as far as what does this nebulous new player experience encompass, and what comes with that. I think for a long time there's been a certain cohort of folks that have been pushing for, something like the parallel model where you can come in and play any cards you want for free. Your earnings are just going to be vastly reduced based upon your percentage of ownership in the match, and really getting folks hooked on the fun and the gameplay. And for a long time, Matt was very much against kind of the free to play model, but I think we've seen a very clear shift in perspective towards embracing that kind of free to play model, and hoping for fun gameplay and solid community, and the social aspects that come with brawls and tournaments, and developing those relationships with folks, that's going to be enough to create conversions, and get folks from that, what you just alluded to, Wolf, the kind of extractor mentality and approach, over that speed bump and into the territory where I'm a long-term believer in what this game can do well into the future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree there. It's really interesting that to see the shift to free to play in regards also to Glint, and comparing it with my own journey with Ethgard Legends, because I also implemented a way where you can play the game for free, but the rewards are simply based on the amount of on the assets you have. If you have a higher, it's similar like cards. If you upgrade your heroes, then you also get better chests and better rewards. But it's very interesting to see that Matt and I somehow came to a similar conclusion, even though we didn't talk about that, and even though everyone worked on their own path, making sure that the barrier to entry is very low and making sure that it's free to play, but the assets you earn are protected by the assets you own is also very important. Otherwise, it's just going to be people joining your game and then leaving. There was this one game I recently saw on Adept. I'm not going to say names, but it had this huge jump to 800K users, and it's now back to 9,000. Now, I'm not sure what exactly happened. Maybe the play to airdrop campaign ended, but none of that stuff is really organically and healthy. So when you provide rewards or airdrops, we need to expect people trying to farm that. So there probably also need to be ways to make sure that there are incentives for people to come in and participate to the airdrops without much hassle, but still protect people from coming in, creating 10,000 bots and just farming it. It's really difficult to build a Web3 game. Really, that's one lesson I learned out of these, well, at least out of the last year of building Ethgard Legends. It's difficult, yeah, but it's fun. Yeah.
It feels challenging, watching from a distance and without having the context of the development perspective. But yeah, so I'm curious with, I want to touch on kind of one more big topic, and you've seen the kind of both sides of this, and I'm alluding, of course, to the Splinterlands DAO. Is that in your perspective, Wolf? Is that, I think it's fantastic that the community gets to have stake weighted vote in kind of impactful decisions uh as regarding which direction does the game go, which direction does the community go, how do rewards get distributed, that sort of stuff. But it's very clearly a double-edged sword, and we have made wrong decisions on more than one occasion that have come back to bite us in the ass. Do you feel like is a DAO a prerequisite to Web3 at this point? Do you feel like it's something that's necessary? Is it a value add, or do you think it ultimately hamstrings the game and the game's ability to endure?
That's a very good question as well. The DAO is crucial for decentralized games. Otherwise, it's really difficult to manage the game. So when a game is not owned by a single entity and you have money involved, you need to make sure that there's a way, a democratic way, how the money can be spent. Now, of course, humans are still humans, and people make mistakes, people make good decisions, bad decisions. That happens. People can, my experience is often it's a bit like politics. You need to sell yourself, you need to sell your product, and you need to make sure that people get your point. And that's also one big part of being part of a DAO. You need to make sure that if you want people to understand your point, that you get it across. But based on or to your question, the DAO is very important. I might think about, based on my experience, it is very easy to stop proposals from going through in the SPS DAO, simply based on the fact that you need a majority to go through, so 66 or 67%. And that means that the other one third can just boycott. So a bit more than one third can basically kind of dictate what proposals go through. They can't make sure that their own proposals can go through, but they can stop others. And if you look at other ways, there are, for example, on EVM, there are, I forgot the name, but there are different tools that allow you to create DAOs and decision and voting, such as these that we have on the website, where you go to proposals and then you can vote. Those are already done as a tool, and you can just input your own token and then create your own community. And if I remember correctly, those have a different threshold. So it's about the majority, not which means if 51% are in favor of something and 49% are not in favor, it goes through. In Splinterlands, that would mean it wouldn't go through, and I would argue that this is a mistake, because again, it allows a small group of people to dictate of what goes through. But again, this would also be something that would need to be a proposal. So if you want to change the proposal system, it would need to be a proposal. Yeah.
Yeah, so something that I would love to see, and maybe it's a bit of a tangent, but on a very related note, let's use Vugtis as an example. Sitting with, I think the better part of 40 million staked SPS at this point. I feel like Vugtis, on most occasions, he's not going to vote because there's no way for him to very lightly push the scale one way or the other. I feel like there should be a way for you to kind of power down your vote outside of unstaking. And then your voice can still be heard and seen, but you're not, very forcefully pressing your finger or your full 40 million staked SPS body weight one way or the other. Do you
just
feel like that's
get new accounts and split it up between the accounts if you really want to do, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. So I was just looking up the tool I was mentioning. It's called snapshot.org. And when you go there, you will see different DAO communities: Aave, ENS, ApeCoin, Lido, Starknet, Heroes of Mavia.
yeah.
A lot of them are there. And when you scroll down and then you go to docs, or maybe there's another way, but I saw it in docs. There are different strategies to vote on, which means the problem you just mentioned, I'm not sure if it's strategies or somewhere else, I need to look for it, but the problem you were just mentioning of Vuctus having a lot of power, there are different strategies within snapshot.org which mitigate some of these issues. So one way we could do, or that the community could do, is they could look through the strategies and improve the proposal system in such a way that it would give more power to the amount of voters and not the. So if Vuctus votes with 40 million, the algorithm makes it so that his weight is actually 20 million. He wouldn't have to do anything. It would just be a different strategy of calculating the results of the voting. And snapshot.org is a great way to look what other popular projects are using.
Interesting. Yeah, we were talking about that a lot with Clay last week, because I feel like there's, we've talked about this quite a bit actually recently. The community should not be making some of the decisions that are being asked and presented to the DAO. There's a lot of maybe gameplay related stuff where, something exactly like what you're referring to there, Wolf, would be much more appropriate in terms of gauging community sentiment versus, okay, we need to actually register by stake weighted vote. How does the community feel? If we're just looking for community sentiment, then that's, there's got to be a better way. So I appreciate you pointing that out. Hopefully some folks will run with that. Snapshot.org. I've got it pinned. I'll take a little bit more of a closer look after we get off the call, but yeah, cool.
Yeah, of course. And but that is a great way of being a DAO, right? We can ask these decisions. It might not be easy, but we have the option or the possibility of influencing the project. And I would argue that it is just a path of development and of people learning how to interact with this technology, because we have to remember it's really new. DAOs are not something that existed a decade ago. It's new. So tools need to be developed, standards need to be developed. And the snapshot.org is a great example of the point I was making earlier about the toolkits and what is outside within EVM and other ecosystems is really a lot. And I know the feeling of being within an ecosystem, i.e. Hive, and being fully focused on what's happening there, but losing a bit of touch about how the whole space is developing super fast. And I can only and that is one good lesson I learned for myself. Always look around and see what's happening. And Snapshot is a great example of learning from other projects.
Beautiful. Yeah, I feel like we're at a place now where, if we were trying to implement the DAO today, we would, potentially have much better, kind of a foothold, I guess, to move forward from. Yeah. So now that we've got the, the benefit of a Web3 gaming community who is also implementing their own interpretations of what a DAO should and could look like, there's no reason why we should not be looking outward to improve our own system internally.
Yeah, I agree. And one thought I just had as well is it is the most important point or the most important goal for Splinterlands right now is just to survive. I, I don't want this to sound as if I would expect that something bad happens. That's not what I'm referring to. I'm just saying that the most important value of Splinterlands is that it's a decentralized game, and that is so valuable because we exist already for 6 years, and things are just going to get better as more and more decisions and as we have more and more time to make sure that the game becomes more robust. And the way to achieve this is by making sure that we're not dying because um, the servers die. And that's going back to the validator. So in order to have all these discussions about the DAO, we just need to make sure that it's actually possible to make these decisions, and the software is very important for that.
Yeah. Well, Wolf, let's start wrapping this thing up, man. Obviously I think you've made it very clear throughout this episode, and obviously in your pursuit of developing and creating your own game and community and all the rest that comes with that. You're obviously bullish on Web3 gaming. You're an advocate for what's possible with Web3 and kind of the full scope of what Web3 could potentially mean for the future of gaming. Why don't you kind of take us home with your biggest, brightest crystal ball reading for what Web3 could look like in the next couple of years? What has you most excited for being a part of Web3 gaming?
Hmm. Mm,
Just a small question to help us
yeah,
wrap up here.
of course. Um, um, the reason I'm in the reason why I'm building Web3 gaming is because I truly believe in the value propositions and how games how completely new game how new games can be designed with that technology in mind. I'm not here because of the money or the NFTs, or it's just a tool in order to get there. Like Splinterlands is able to have DAO decisions or discussions because of this technology. It wouldn't be possible before. And what I really enjoy, and one reason why I'm in Web3 gaming is, of course, I'm asking myself why I'm doing this. I mean, do I really want to do games, so like entertainment for a living? And my answer to that was yes, because it's giving so much. It gave me so much. I, I recently played a bit of Pokemon on my GBA, as again modded, of course, but the GBA is modded with a new display, etc. But it was just a fun experience as a child, and seeing how much that influenced me gives me a reason to build that, but with a new technology stack in mind. And what I'm really excited about is that while I'm still building Ethgard Legends, one reason or one idea we recently came up with, which I think will be a huge game changer, is that we are branching out to Ethgard. So Ethgard is a world we're building, and Ethgard Legends will be a part of it. And it will be something where different gaming experiences can exist. So it will be something which fits much better together with Splinterlands than Ethgar Legends, because Ethgar Legends was a card game, or not was, is a card game, and Splinterlands also is a card game. And Ethgard in return will be, you can imagine, as a open world where you have different portals, which in return turn into new gaming experiences. It's still in the building phase and the design phase, but that is something which makes me really excited to get up and working. And one thing why I believe that even though Splinter Royale turned into Ethgard Legends, it is for the better because it allows me to build something which can stand on its own 2 feet, and optimally there can be a symbiosis between both projects, and both projects can benefit. Splinterlands has this huge Hive community, and I'm able to branch out and focus more on the EVM crowd, and hopefully that works out, and then I can, if everything works out, maybe some of those can also learn about Splinterlands, etc., etc. But of course, all of this is in the future. But it's one thing why I'm excited to be on here, and why I wanted to talk with you, because even though it's not called Splinter Royale anymore, I still very very much care for the community, and I truly believe that I'm building something which can be of value for everyone. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Do you
beautiful,
want to
man.
talk any more about the actual game? Where can people check it out if they haven't? If people kind of missed it in the migration, talk a little about the platforms it's available on, and how people can access it.
Of course. So Ethgard Legends, it's ethgardlegends.com. I'm sure you will also see a link. You can also go to playegl.com, and yeah, it's a fun auto brawler. And in the future, Ethgard will live on ethgard.com. And yeah, if you have any questions, just DM me on Twitter or on Discord. I'm in the Splinterlands Discord server. You can find me under the Wolf on Chain or Wolf on Chain. Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah, I've got your Ethgard Legends link plugged in. I'm tagging. I see Ethgard Legends has a Hive account. I will plug that, as well as the
Oh,
Real
yes.
Wolf in our article for you. Well, Wolf, man, I feel like we covered a lot of ground, and we're definitely appreciative of your kind of perspective and all the context around Web3 and Splinterland's role in it, and kind of your ambitions for what Ethgard Legends can be in the future of Web3 gaming. Very fascinating conversation. Again, shout out to iBlast SVS for introducing us and suggesting that we get you on. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, and I'd love to welcome you back at some point in the future, man. If you feel like there's some stuff that you want to kind of come and talk through or get through to the community, we're happy to provide a platform for you. And yeah, welcome back anytime, man.
Yeah, thank you very much. I hope so. I will keep my eye out in the Web3 space, and I'm always trying to learn. And I'm always happy to talk with you. Thank you again for inviting me.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
All right,
thanks,
everybody. Yeah, hopefully you enjoyed the show, and we'll be back next week with another episode. In the meantime, we did just drop, and this is something I meant to bring up, and I would love to get your perspective on, Wolf. Maybe we can see one of your a little bit of a nostalgic Hive blog peak deep post with all your fancy artwork and that sort of stuff in response to uh, this week's challenge. So I dropped the challenge article this morning. We're talking about, what if any change should we hope to see in the next kind of distribution and sale mechanics of the impending core set from Splinterlands that should drop at some point in the next year. And I think a lot of folks are kind of chomping at the bit for some major change, and maybe that's a good challenge for you to dust off the old keyboard for writing an article, Wolf.
Yeah.
Yeah, but for anybody out there who's got some feels a little bit of a creative whim, feel free to look up that challenge and drop your thoughts into an article, and tag us at TPG Challenge. And yeah, hopefully we got some good stuff to talk about next week. But in the meantime, yeah, appreciate you guys swinging by. Hopefully you enjoyed the episode, and thanks again to you, Real Wolf, for coming to hang out with us, man. Catch you next time. You have been listening to
The People's Guild.